there are tons of talented rookies that we have seen on the national stage, winning national championships, not named Caitlin Clark, that do make this a fascinating rookie class that does bring a whole bunch of people to the television sets, to a lot of these conversations that we're seeing on television, on social media. There's no doubt about that. It just feels to me over the last few weeks that everybody has just lost their friggin' minds over this subject matter in a way I didn't quite frankly see coming. And in order to help us restore maybe a little bit of order, we have to learn to turn to the north of the border. The great Canadian, my colleague from the NFL Media Group, getting set to talk Bears OTAs, but also the third overall pick of the 2002 WNBA draft. Good friend Stacey Dales. Good to see you, Stacey. How are you?
Great to be with you, Rich. I'm doing well. It's kind of an interesting summer.
Yeah. What do you think about the national conversation that is surrounding the WNBA at present?
Well, it's fascinating, and I feel like every time I join you or join Sue's on the show, the program, I've said it's unprecedented, and I always stay away from the hyperbole of it, but it really is a shifting of the guard in women's basketball, and there's so many layers to it. It's really a conversation we could have for a couple of hours, but as somebody who played in the league that has existed for 27 years, I have really never seen anything like this. And I think a big part of it, Rich, when you think about Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and Cameron Brink and all of these really exciting new players in the W, they had a profile coming into the W. And as we've seen the advent and evolution of social media and the NIL name, image, and likeness and the evolution of such, we've seen a certain celebrity enter the WNBA in the past couple years that maybe didn't really have its impact even 5 years ago. So when you have that level of celebrity, which is a word I use delicately, I was talking to Lindsey Vonn once, Rich, and I said, well, how do you deal with some of the celebrity? And she said, I'm not a celebrity, I'm an athlete. And these are athletes, but they have personalities. And, I recently emceed the announcement of the new Toronto WNBA team, which will take shape in 2026. And I had conversations with WNBA officials and people from the league. They have had to adjust, Rich, how they are handling the wave of now explosion in terms of media and the impact that it's having on really the greater sports landscape. The fact that it has been trending, it's the top sports trend, tells you a lot with all else that's happening right now with the NHL, the NBA, and of course, Major League Baseball. I could go on.
Yeah, I hear you. So the question is, because, where do we go from here? How about this? That the conversation has been, certainly from somebody who's been sitting in this chair for almost 10 years while working together on NFL Network, Stacey, that we have heard over and over again, why aren't you talking more about the WNBA? Why aren't you talking more about women's basketball? And over the last few years, with the advent of some really intense action in the women's Final Four and the tournament, and Caitlin Clark was part of that, and she never won it all, which was part of her journey, and just her overall excellence, along with others who are also excellent, that there's now more eyeballs, and it feels like the conversation is assigning credit for whom the eyeballs are there, and that there does appear to be some sort of veteran presence that's been there waiting for the eyeballs to arrive, and feels a little bit, I guess, I don't know, maybe the adjective is angry, I don't know, or upset that it hasn't arrived yet, that they've been there already. And every adjective you use is infused with associating it with a woman, and how that needs to be treaded lightly as well. Although this is a competition and these players are beating each other up in a way that we would ascribe to any sport as watchable, exciting, intense. So I kind of hand it off to you to say, make heads or tails of this, Stacey.
Where do I start with this? I did play in the league. You know what a bandwagon is, Rich. A bunch of people have jumped on it, and I have no problem with that. And I have no problem with opinion. But I think the adjective that I have come up with, because I've heard that word you used, anger, I've heard jealousy. Is there this underlying jealousy from some of these veteran players, those that no longer play, those that are in the Hall of Fame? For me, it's maybe there's a level of resentment. And that's a word I think we can all take in our own lives. We hold resentment against people because maybe they've gotten something or they've done something against us, whatever it may be. I think there may be a little touch of that when it comes to, as we heard introing this segment, Angel Reese talk about, and I wrote the quote down, she said, a lot of us have done so much for this game. There are many other players in this league that have deserved this for a long time. That's the part that got clipped on social media and Twitter, X, whatever you call it. Prior to, she said, the reason we're watching the WNBA is not just because of one player, it's because of me too. And then she went on to say, and all the others. I think the fact that she said the next part was important because I think that's part of the resentment that I'm speaking of. I don't think anybody, the other word I've heard is targeting Caitlin Clark. Listen, the bottom line is let's take the word targeting and replace it with pride. Because nobody wants to, as I would describe it, Rich, get got by Caitlin Clark, right? She is deserving of everything that she has achieved. She shoots a deep ball like she's in quicksand. Like she's that far back and it looks that hard. And then it just comes out of her hands so quickly. I would argue she's a better passer than she is a shooter.
Yep.
I mean, she's out there doling out assists right now, Rich, at a clip of, I think, 4th in the WNBA. With 6 assists per game. But if you go and look at scoring and all of the players in this league, I mean, Asia Wilson right now in Las Vegas, and this is where some of the other players may have something to say about it. She's averaging basically 27 and 13, and she's got a couple belts under her name. Like, that is what I think people are referring to, or maybe some jealousy that some of these other players aren't getting the acclaim and a $28 million shoe deal that Caitlin Clark is. But regardless of that, I could go back years prior and say, I put Lisa Leslie in the game right now. She will be the most dominant center in the league. Like, that's how good she was. And I played against her. So you take that resentment part, put it aside. I think this thing will plateau and I think it will even itself out. But I don't believe people are, putting a bounty out on Caitlin Clark. I watched the game this past weekend that sort of created all this upheaval with the Sky and the Fever in Indiana. They got their first home win. I watched the game. I saw the jawing that went back and forth between Kennedy Carter, who, by the way, Rich, didn't play in the league last year. She's trying right now to really go for a second chance in the WNBA. She had to play overseas. She had a brilliant, I would say, all WNBA rookie team in Atlanta after being drafted out of Texas A&M. I think it was 4th overall. Mm-hmm. She's trying to have a resurgence. She's a 6th player. She's coming off the bench for the Hall of Famer, Teresa Weatherspoon, who I played against. And she is trying to find her moment. So she goes for a game high 19, right? Pretty good game. Makes a good bucket, look pretty good, pretty solid, smooth. And then she bows up, chest out. I'm gonna say something right now. I think the emotions got the best of her. It was a very isolated moment. And away from the play foul, it was called, as we see it here. And subsequently, later on, they upgrade it to a flagrant 1. So flagrant 1 is unnecessary contact against the opposition, 2 shots plus the ball. Flagrant 2, she would have been ejected. So I'm glad the league got it right in elevating it because it was inappropriate. As Caitlin Clark said, it wasn't a basketball play. To me, it was an isolated incident. That isn't what we're seeing. In fact, what we're seeing with Caitlin Clark right now in the league, Rich, as I've watched games, and I'm really fascinated and I love watching it, is she's being defended as a rookie in ways that maybe we haven't seen so much. I mean, when you're talking about defending Caitlin Clark 94 feet, yep. You're face guarding her so she can't get the ball in her hands. Pick and rolls, it's an automatic blitz. like they're doing things to her defensively. What is that? It's respect. There's so much respect for her talent. And I think that is getting overlooked. And we're starting to say, wait, she's getting targeted? No, there's pride. Hey, we belong here too. Kennedy Carter, a good example. She's trying to make her second chance here, as I alluded to. And you get players like that in the heat of the moment. Mistake, boom, we're in an uproar on the outside because have we never seen this in the WNBA? Trust me, we've seen plenty of this in the WNBA for 27 years in its existence.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. If there's any sort of an outlier in your estimation, you've clearly addressed that, Stacey Dales. And listen, you're about to go off to Bears training camp. And Caleb Williams is the first overall pick and the golden child of the Chicago Bears, and obviously he's got a significant following, although I don't believe it's like Caitlin Clark's following. You're right. I mean, Caitlin Clark's got a following coast to coast, international, and a level of interest on her that surpasses, in my estimation, the first overall pick of an NFL draft. And if we don't think sitting here week one against the Tennessee Titans, Jeffrey Simmons isn't going to raise his hand and saying, I will deliver the welcome to the NFL moment to Caleb Williams, then we should have our NFL card revoked. Anybody on the Houston Texans the next week, and then the Indianapolis Colts, and so on and so forth. We've seen this in so many leagues. I guess the question I have for you is, have I missed something? Has Caitlin Clark, brought this on with her behavior? I mean, because you were there in Toronto when they announced a new franchise, and a lot of people are ascribing that and the commercial flights going away and charter flights arriving to her arrival. Is there anything that I'm missing that players are seeing from Caitlin Clark that says we're going to show her, outside of just being a heralded rookie, maybe the most in the history, certainly this century of the W?
Yeah, well, when you say we're going to show her, that's what I'm referring to. Like, we belong here too.
Right.
And so here's what's going to happen. The chain reaction, if you don't know, like, let's just pick a name, Kelsey Plum. For all these new viewers that have jumped on the bandwagon, if you are starting to really watch the league like you do your favorite team in whatever sports professional realm that is, on the men's side, you probably will fall in love with a Kelsey Plum. She's phenomenal. Or Nafisa Collier, or you want to watch the Sky play right now. They're playing New York with Sabrina Ionescu and Courtney Vandersloot, and two players that handle the ball as well as anybody I've seen, and not to mention Brianna Stewart. Like, so you're going to start, okay, well, that's my favorite player. Clark's really good, but now I respect this. But that's how you broaden the scope. But again, the WNBA, Rich, has had to adjust to this wave for the last now couple years, and Caitlin Clark has just pushed it over the top of these name, image, and likeness collegiate players. How much fun was it to watch the women's tournament, right? That have come onto the stage now, and they've already got personalities. So now, as a franchise, you have to manage that. They're going to have to bolster their PR staffs. And I'll tell you this. You talk about Caleb Williams and the Bears. So just little tiny details, right? So one thing the Bears are doing right now is it's probably going to be Ryan Bates, his starting center. Rich, you know how important the center position is.
Yeah.
Ask Patrick Mahomes how much he loves Creed Humphrey, right? Coleman Shelton is actually getting reps with Ryan Bates. Bates will probably be the starter. But right now what the Bears are doing is saying, hey, we want to make sure he knows how to hand the ball off to our number one overall pick, he's transcendent. He's going to be, we expect him to be, so that he's really comfortable. Oh, and by the way, Caleb Williams right now is doing something really good. He's delving into the community in Chicago, Rich. We're seeing him at bars. We're seeing him at Cubs games. And he's also building very fond relationships inside of Hallis Hall, so that when he takes the field, as you alluded to, against Mr. Simmons, against the Tennessee Titans, by the way, they don't have a divisional game until week 11. That is insane. And it happens to be the Packers. It happens to be the Packers. They got to get so tight, Rich, that when they take the field in September in week 1, every one of those men is going to bat for that quarterback. And I have learned this over the years, now entering 16 seasons covering the NFL, that the relationship with the quarterback and his offensive line, it's so important that I'll just say when Olu Fashanu got traded to your Jet or got drafted by your Jets. Guess who was the first one to say welcome to the team on Twitter/X? Aaron Rodgers, right? Retweeting welcome to the squad, young man, like whatever he said. But that relationship's got to be great, Rich, right? And as a Jets guy, I mean, so my point for Caitlin Clark is we're dealing right now with 12 teams, I think in the league. We're going to go to 14. Golden State and Toronto are the next two. And that group has to get so tight, and it's so hard to do it. We saw Caitlin Clark in the national championship game. 2 months later, or not even, she's in Indiana fever. She's got to join a team in a league with, what is it? Correct me if I'm wrong, 144 players. If I'm off a couple numbers, I apologize. This is a very small pool of players. They have to develop chemistry in a very short amount of time. And they've had to adjust in Indiana with their head coach, Christy Sides, and this whole group as to how do we learn how to do this with her, right? And it's a young team. So people want to say, where were her teammates? Well, Leah Boston was right there, came and scooped her up. But really, those relationships have to build off the field to where you are so tight, which is really hard to do in the WNBA early, because I've been a part of it. I was a part of a brand new franchise, in fact, in Chicago. And it's different than college, where Caitlin Clark played 4 years with the same coach, the same system, and the same players, essentially. So it is an adjustment period for them. And it's an adjustment period, really, I think, for Caitlin Clark as she deals with this. The physicality is going to be there. It is a brutally physical game. It is so competitive in the WNBA because, as I mentioned, there aren't many teams and there aren't many players. And if you make a roster, you're pretty damn sure that I want to stay on that roster. So I'm going to put my best foot forward in every single dimension. And so you're going to see this respect for Caitlin Clark that is ensuing. Right now, she's, I think, 18th in the league in scoring. So look at all those players, above her. And by the way, one of those players, Rich, it's 41-year-old Diana Taurasi, who a couple nights ago put up 31 for Phoenix against the Sparks. And she, to me, is probably the best player that I've ever played against. So she's 41 years old. So
you're aging all of us, huh, Stacey? I got a couple minutes left with Stacey Dales here. So just your 2 cents on seeing the Bears. You've been around them. It just feels different. And I know that's just a metric. I know that's just it's not a tangible metric unless you really feel it. What's the difference right now?
Ryan Poles. I believe in it. I believe in his picks. I believe in the conviction. What I love is Caleb Williams is walking into a situation where we're finally gonna have Hard Knocks in Chicago. Can you believe it, Rich?
Right.
Like, it's gonna be awesome. He's walking into a situation with a team. It's like, probably when you met Susie, or probably when anyone met their significant other, that I love you, you love me, let's get engaged, let's get married, and let's roll. And let's make some babies. I don't know. Like, it's that, to me, it's that how much of a buy-in we've seen from both sides. That is the best way I can explain it. And the way to top it all off with the cherry, as Ryan Poles said, that's going to be our guy, Caleb Williams. And we're going to have to go out and make sure this roster is so good for him that even if he's average, even if he plays average, let's say that happens, we'll still be really good and we'll be in contention to get to the playoffs and advance. And if you look at this roster with Roma Dunze and Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift, and then that defense, which I think is really good under the direction of not just Eric Washington, the DC, but the play caller, Matt Eberflus, as we saw last season. There's complete buy-in there. They could actually be pretty good in Chicago. And so I think they've set him up for some success. And I think both sides are all in on the other, which when you're wanted in life, you do a whole lot better. I think you would agree.
Well, and I do agree with that, except for your analogy, just to be completely straightforward and honest. After I met Susie for the first time, I was ready to do a lot of what you mentioned. She was wow. Free to I was wondering if I was going to ever get a second contract. You know what I mean? Like I was wondering if that would ever happen. Free agency was actually offered to me nonstop by her, but then again, it all did happen, Stacey. Which is, I guess, the ultimate point.
I'm glad you ended up getting the Super Bowl, Rich.
That's correct. That's right. Hey, Stacey, thank you for the time and the insight. And, it has just been a wild first few weeks of national conversation and attention and opinions on a subject matter that many people are new to talking about.
It is.
And
Rich, can we just all agree, it's a really great league. The basketball is exceptional. Caitlin Clark is exceptional. And we're going to get a long run of this in the many years to come. That's where we're at. We're expanding in the WNBA. And when I think about all the players that have come before, it's pretty damn impressive, really. And it's too long. We don't have enough time to go through them all, but it's really special.
Stacey, say hi to everybody in Bears camp for me, and we'll chat again soon.
Thanks, Rich.
You got it. Stacey Dales covering all 94 feet of this subject matter right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.